Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new, actually not really brand new, it's newer. It's from the Jurassic World Dominion line, but it was like a later line that only came out not long ago. But it's the Carnotaurus from Toy Monster International. We have the supersized version of the Carnotaurus. Now, we have had some supersized figures show up here for the Jurassic Park 30th anniversary line in the United States, but we did not have any of the Jurassic World Dominion supersized Captivz show up here. And specifically, this wave was actually really hard to find, and I would definitely say would be probably some of the rarest figures in the Captivz line as a whole, because I've only heard of them showing up in two places so far. One is Canada, and the other one, I can't even recall. I think maybe it was Spain. I forget exactly where it was, but there was one other place where I had heard of someone finding them. But there was, again, a later wave that had three new figures that were supersized, and one of which was the Carnotaurus. So I am beyond excited that my good friend Jurassic KM was cool enough to help me to acquire these, because I would have definitely missed these figures, and specifically the Carnotaurus would be, of course, the one that I want the most because it's my favorite dinosaur ever. So having a supersized Captivz version of the Carnotaurus from Jurassic World Dominion is definitely something that I would not want to miss out on. And as you can see, it looks pretty cool. Definitely, again, a very large version of the figure that we've had quite a few times already in the Captivz line. So far, they haven't released a newly sculpted Carnotaurus, which I would like to see, but this one is really quite nice, and definitely a very cool interpretation of the Jurassic World Dominion Carnotaurus. So let's jump to a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Carnotaurus, you can see it's got a pretty decent amount of detail to it, lots of really nice skin texture. The one thing that I've never been a big fan of about the Toy Monster Carnotaurus is the fact that the eyes are always huge and they end up being really wonky, and I don't know why. Like, you can see the pupils like looking up here, and that's really looking up over on this side. The eyes themselves are just absolutely massive. I think it's just an issue with maybe whoever their factory is, and they paint them, they think maybe the eye's bigger on the Carnotaurus than it is. I'm not too sure, but it does always end up looking a little goofy, and you can see exactly that with the eye on this one. But you can see we've got a nice mixture of variations of grays here on the face, and that's pretty much the way the Carnotaurus looks in Jurassic World Dominion, as it has kind of like a black or grayish tone to it, like a very dark grayish tone. And you can see they've done a very good job of adding this coloration in a way where it all kind of meshes very nicely, and we have like a I don't know if it's so much a dry brushing or maybe they used a wash. I'm not too sure, but it does look really nice on the figure. There is definitely a dry brushing effect on the upper part here, but you can see on top of the grayish tones, we've also got like some reddish tones meshing here in the face, again giving it that demon Carnotaurus sort of a look like the Carnotaurus has in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom at the end of the film, and of course Dominion. You can see some nice looking detailing here in the lower part of the neck and throat as well, but the Carnotaurus is sculpted with its mouth in an open position. You can see the inside of the mouth looks pretty decent. We've got a nicely sculpted tongue in there and some okay detail otherwise. Nice pinkish tone in there as well, and the teeth all look fairly decent. You know, you can see a little extra paintwork on the lower jaw, but that's very minimal, that's very minor. Outside of that, I think it looks really quite nice. One thing, though, you can probably see is we have a nice scar here on the face, and that's because I think this would have been the same sculpt used for Carnotaurus Toro, which is, I believe, when they had initially introduced the Carnotaurus into the Captivz line, I believe was for the Camp Cretaceous line. And you can see we do have those Toro scars, but what is cool is the Carnotaurus in Jurassic World Dominion has a chipped horn, and you can see that was captured here on this version. So even though we have a little bit of a taste of Carnotaurus Toro, we also have the, you know, kind of chipped horn that the Dominion version has, so that is a plus. As you move back into the neck, you can see the neck has kind of like some tensing occurring because the Carnotaurus is clearly letting out a vocalization or snapping at something. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. You can see the arms are held into the body, kind of. One arm is extended out a little bit further, but the arm on this side's held a little further into the body. I think the arms look a little bit bigger than they probably should, but they still look okay. You can also see as you move back here into the stomach region, we've got the rib cage showing, and here's where you can really, I think, take in and appreciate the nice paintwork of this Carnotaurus. As you can see, again, we've got like the variations of grays. You could definitely pick out at least two different variations of, lighter and darker shades of grays. But we also have some more of those reddish tones moving along the upper side of the Carnotaurus, and you can see they've definitely dry brushed a lot of the osteoderms moving through the course of the Carnotaurus out with those reddish tones. As you move back a little further, you can see some nice muscle definition extending here from the thigh, and you can also see the kneecap as well as the calf muscle moving down. And then as you lead into the foot sculpt, you can see a nice bend there in the foot as the dinosaur has this leg kind of extended back. You can see some nice scoots running down the course of the toes. Unfortunately, we don't have painted nails, which is kind of crazy to say when you look at how nice and precise the paintwork was for the newer hatchlings for the Toy Monster International line, the Captivz line, but you can see we were missing nail paint on this Carnotaurus. But as you move back up here, you can again see a really nice curve to the tail. You can also see a little bit more kind of like reddish tones moving out, and then of course variations of grays, really sharp turn for the tail here of the Carnotaurus, and then the underside also sports some fairly decent looking detailing here as you move along. And then of course you're going to see pretty much the same thing over here because there's not a whole lot of difference going on. You can see the Carnotaurus is just kind of crouched, letting out a vocalization of some kind. The leg here on this side is just extended forward as it's taking a step, whereas the leg on the opposing side is there kind of trailing. And then of course the tail now curves away from us, but it all looks really, really nice. Again, definitely some nice paintwork, nice sculpt work. There are a few issues, of course, with the Carnotaurus, like the sloppy eye paint, and when it comes to like screen accuracy, I think the arms are maybe a little bit longer than they probably were on the Carnotaurus itself, but it's still very nicely done. And when it comes to a supersized Captivz Carnotaurus, I am over the moon excited to actually have this here. As far as a size goes on our supersized Carnotaurus, for a length, you're looking at about 5 inches or around 12.5 centimeters. And the highest point is definitely the tip of the tail, which is just a hair under 2 3/4 inches or around 7 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our supersized Captivz Carnotaurus. But at this point, I would like to think we probably have a pretty good idea as far as what the size of the supersized figures are, especially with the release of the Jurassic Park 30th anniversary figures here in the United States. We definitely already have a pretty good idea of what the size of these figures are. But for a comparison, I'm definitely interested in seeing. There is the size difference between the supersized version and the standard version. So you can now see there is definitely a pretty good difference in size between these two. Clearly the supersized version is a lot larger, but you can see some of the same kind of issues with the supersized version compared to the standard version. You can see again, we also have those big, wonky, sort of large eyes. But you can also see again that when it comes to the older Toro version, we did have both horns, whereas we now have the chipped horns. So it is nice to see that they did actually give it a little bit of difference, even though it's clearly in the same pose, it's clearly the same figure, but since the Carnotaurus design doesn't differ too far when it comes to the Dominion version compared to Camp Cretaceous or Fallen Kingdom, the only thing they really did to switch it up was, of course, chip the horn, which I think was a nice touch. I think they should have kind of resculpted the face a little bit just so that it didn't have that scar that Toro has, but it is still, again, really cool that they at least took the effort to resculpt the horn and kind of give it that chipped horn sort of look. So this Jurassic World Dominion supersized Captivz Carnotaurus is definitely a really, really cool figure. Definitely one that I am so psyched to now have in my collection because it's one that I was pretty confident I was going to miss. When I had first found out that these figures, this wave of supersized figures existed, I almost became obsessed with trying to get a hold of them, but the person who I had seen that had acquired them had only found one set and they couldn't find any more. But luckily, my good friend, again, Jurassic KM from Canada, had stepped up and offered me some really cool repaints, but in the email that he had sent me about his repaints that he made, which again, definitely check out the unboxing video that I had posted of all of the cool stuff that I was able to get a hold of from him. But he had also mentioned that he had this wave of supersized Captivz, and boy, if there was some way to go back and look at my face when I had read that, I bet my eyes lit up like crazy because I had at that point given up again hope of ever finding them. I was just going to very sadly move on, even though I have the complete line of every Captivz so far. I really didn't think there was any chance of me getting a hold of these ones. But again, thankfully, he had contacted me, mentioned that he had them, and again, scored me an entire set of all three of the Wave 2 supersized Captivz from Toy Monster International. And I now have the pleasure of adding the Carnotaurus, my favorite dinosaur ever, into my collection. And it looks really good here. Again, I love the fact that we have a really cool demon-style Carnotaurus version of a supersized one, no less. But I love the fact that that was even used in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom at the end of the film and in Dominion, because it's such a cool throwback to the old Kenner toy line. And I like that they kind of recreated that Carnotaurus, but in sort of a more realistic kind of a way. And I think this version from Toy Monster International looks really nice. I think they did a great job on the sculpt, a great job on the paint, mostly, outside of the eyes. And, of course, we could have used painted nails, but that's kind of minor, I would say. Especially when the nails are all a dark tone like the rest of the body. It kind of looks like it has painted nails in a way. But again, it does look really nice. The paintwork is really well done. It's very cool to see how much effort they put into applying more realistic paint jobs to their figures, especially when it comes to the supersized versions. So definitely another awesome release from Toy Monster International for their Captivz supersized figures. I am loving the supersized figures. I would say they're probably my favorite thing when it comes to the Captivz line, because it's so cool to have their beautiful sculpts in a larger size. If you are interested in grabbing one of these for yourself, unfortunately, as I mentioned, they are very hard to find, but I really wanted to get some reviews up of these guys just to show them off to you guys, so you know whether it's something you want to pursue or not. Because of how complicated they are to find, I really feel like having a chance to view them and look them over before deciding if you want to go through the hassle of trying to find them is something that could benefit most collectors. So hopefully, if you are interested, you can locate them. Maybe you can find someone in Canada that you know that potentially could hook you up, or maybe they'll show up here eventually, but I just don't know that I see that happening. Regardless, it's a really cool figure, so if you have the chance to grab it, definitely pick it up, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.